"Get out of here, you bum!" The restaurant manager shouted at the elderly man sitting at the table in his worn jacket. "My customers are uncomfortable. Leave before I call the police." The man quietly stood up, leaving his half-finished soup on the table. But just as he approached the door, a young soldier eating in the restaurant noticed the faded pin on the man's shoulder and froze. That pin was an insignia that only holders of the highest courage medal could wear, and 15 minutes later, when the general stepped out of the 8 military vehicles lined up outside the restaurant, he would ask, "Where is that hero?" Welcome to Unseen Heroes Archive. Before we begin this powerful story, tell me in the comments which city you're watching from today, and if you believe stories like this need to be heard, hit that subscribe button and help us keep these stories alive. Thomas "Tommy" Rodriguez, 71 years old, was born and raised in a small town in Virginia. His childhood was difficult. He had no father, and his mother tried to raise him by working cleaning jobs. At 18, with an uncertain future, he realized his only option was the military. He joined the Marines in 1971. It was during the most intense period of the Vietnam War, and young soldiers were being sent to the battlefield quickly. Tommy's basic training took place at Paris Island. Tough, merciless, but a process that shaped his character. He received his first assignment in Vietnam in 1972. He served with 1st Battalion, 9th Marines. His assignment was in Quang Tri Province, one of the most active areas of North Vietnamese forces. His first months in Vietnam passed quietly. Tommy was trying to learn warfare alongside experienced soldiers. Team leader Staff Sergeant Williams was a tough but fair man. It took time for him to see Tommy differently from other young soldiers. Everything changed on that humid June morning. Charlie Company had received intelligence about a village where North Vietnamese army was hiding. The operation was simple: clear the village, neutralize enemy forces, prevent civilian casualties, but no plan works perfectly in war. As they approached the village, Tommy noticed something strange. It was too quiet. Even the dogs weren't barking. Experienced soldiers would know this was a bad sign. Staff Sergeant Williams divided the team into 3 groups. Tommy would enter from the east side of the village with Corporal Johnson and 2 soldiers. The other groups would approach from north and west. But the village wasn't empty. North Vietnamese soldiers had set up a perfect ambush. When American forces entered the center of the village, they came under heavy fire from 3 directions. "Ambush! Ambush!" Williams's scream came through the radio, but it was hard to hear over the gunfire. Tommy and his friends had taken shelter behind a house, but their position was very bad. They needed to help their friends in the open terrain, but they were under a hail of bullets. "Rodriguez!" Johnson shouted. "There's a machine gun on the left. No one can move until we silence it." Tommy looked at the machine gun position on the left. Getting there was a suicide mission, but there was no other choice. His friends were dying in the open terrain. "Cover me," Tommy said, and started running. The next 30 seconds were the longest moments of Tommy's life. As bullets passed around him, he reached the machine gun position. By running in zigzag, he neutralized 3 North Vietnamese soldiers, but the job wasn't finished yet. Fire continued from other points in the village. Tommy took a new position and began providing covering fire for his friends. This way, the Marines in the open terrain managed to withdraw to safe positions. During the operation, Tommy was hit by 2 bullets, one in his left shoulder, the other in his leg, but he didn't stop firing until all his friends were safe. That day, 11 Marines survived thanks to Tommy's courage. Williams would later say, "Without Rodriguez, none of us would have made it home." When he was taken to the hospital, Tommy's wounds were serious but not life-threatening. He returned to his unit 3 weeks later, but now everyone saw him differently. He was no longer just a young soldier, but a proven warrior. For the next 6 months, Tommy served in Vietnam's most dangerous regions. He participated in dozens of operations, saved countless lives. Other units began to know him as El Tigre, the Tiger, because he could move silently behind enemy lines and accomplish impossible missions. In 1973, when withdrawal operations from Vietnam began, Tommy was among the last groups to leave. In his 18 months of service, He had earned Silver Star, Bronze Star, and Purple Heart medals. But the real honor came in 1974. Tommy's actions on that June day were examined in detail. Witness statements were collected, operation reports were reviewed, and the result was surprising. What Tommy had done was a display of courage, worthy of the Medal of Honor, the highest military honor, but by that time, due to bureaucratic delays, his file had been lost, and the officers following up on the matter had been assigned to different duties. In 1975, in a ceremony at the White House, Corporal Thomas Rodriguez was awarded the Medal of Honor. President Ford personally attended the ceremony. "This country is grateful to you," he said. When Tommy returned home, he was welcomed heroically. Local newspapers wrote stories about him. The town organized an honor day for him. But Tommy was uncomfortable with all this attention. He had just done his job. Tommy's adjustment to civilian life wasn't easy. He had PTSD, but this illness wasn't fully understood at that time. He couldn't sleep at nights, was startled by sudden sounds, had difficulty being in crowds. In the early years, he tried to get by with support from the Veterans Administration. He worked various jobs, construction, security, factory work. But he couldn't sustain any of them for long. Vietnam memories followed him. In 1980, he married Maria. She was a patient woman who understood Tommy's condition. They had 2 children, Michael and Sarah. Tommy tried to be a perfect father for them, but the war inside him never ended. In the 1990s, Tommy's condition worsened. He lost jobs, debts increased. Maria left with the children. "I love you, Tommy, but you're not the same anymore," she had said. Tommy's heart was broken, but he understood her. In the 2000s, Tommy became homeless. There were assistance programs for veterans, but the bureaucracy was very complex. Despite being a Medal of Honor recipient, the system couldn't help him adequately. For the next 20 years, Tommy lived on the streets. Sometimes he stayed in shelters. Sometimes he slept on park benches. He always carried his old military jacket with him, his only connection to the past. When people looked at Tommy, they saw only an old, disheveled homeless man. He had long since sold his Medal of Honor medal for food money. No one knew that he had once been deemed worthy of this country's highest honor, until that Tuesday afternoon. Tommy was standing in front of Sunrise Diner in the center of town. He had his last $3 in his pocket and was very hungry. He was hesitant about whether to go in because his previous experiences hadn't been very good. Finally, he gathered his courage and went inside. The diner was small but warm. A few customers were sitting, and the television was playing quietly in the back. Tommy sat at the corner table. He quietly looked at the menu. The cheapest thing was soup, $2.50. He could afford that. He saw the young waitress coming. The girl hesitated a bit when she saw Tommy's condition, but remained professional. "What would you like?" she asked. "Soup of the day," Tommy said quietly, "and a glass of water." The girl took the order and went to the kitchen. Tommy looked around. People were looking at him, whispering. He was used to these. When his soup arrived, Tommy began eating slowly. The hot soup felt good in his stomach. He hadn't eaten anything proper for a long time. Just then, restaurant manager David Richardson approached. He was middle-aged, fat, and had heard customer complaints. "Sir," Richardson said, lowering his voice, "my customers have indicated they're uncomfortable with your presence. Maybe somewhere else." Tommy looked up. "I have money," he said quietly. "I can pay for my soup." "It's not about money," Richardson said. "It's about appearance. You understand, I'm sure." Tommy understood. This was the story of his life. People judged him by his appearance, didn't want to know his past. "Can I finish my soup?" Tommy asked. Richardson looked around. He saw other customers watching them. "Be quick," he said. Tommy tried to finish his soup, but it had no taste anymore. He felt the stares around him. In their eyes, he was just an unwanted problem. Just then, a voice rose from the corner table. "Excuse me, but which unit did he serve in?" The voice came from a young soldier in uniform. Staff Sergeant Chen had recently returned from Afghanistan and was having dinner with his family. Richardson was confused. "What do you mean, that jacket?" Chen said, pointing to Tommy. "Vietnam-era Marine jacket, and the pin on his shoulder." Chen approached and looked more carefully at Tommy's old jacket. Then his eyes widened. "This can't be possible," he muttered. Then louder, "Sir, are you Thomas Rodriguez?" Tommy looked up. No one had said his name for a long time. "Yes," he said quietly. Chen's face changed. "Sir, are you a Medal of Honor recipient?" The restaurant fell silent. Everyone was listening to this conversation. Tommy nodded. "Once upon a time." Chen immediately stood at attention and saluted. "Sir, it's a great honor to be in the same place as you." Richardson was confused. "What's happening here?" Chen turned to him. "This man is Thomas Rodriguez. He saved 11 Marines' lives in Vietnam. He received this country's highest military honor." The restaurant was shaken. People's way of looking at Tommy changed instantly. An elderly man stood up. "I'm also a Vietnam veteran," he said. "I know the name Rodriguez, a legendary Marine." Another one also stood. "My uncle was there too. He always told us your story." Chen took out his phone. "Sir, may I call my commander? Colonel Martinez would definitely want to know." Tommy was confused. He hadn't received this much attention for a long time. "Please," Chen said. "You're a legend. People should know your story." Tommy nodded. Chen opened the phone. "Colonel Martinez, Staff Sergeant Chen. Sir, you won't believe it, but I've encountered Medal of Honor recipient Thomas Rodriguez." "Yes, sir. Sunrise Diner." "I understand, sir." Chen hung up. "Sir, Colonel Martinez is on his way. He's coming to meet you." Richardson was still in shock. "I'm sorry, I didn't know. Your soup is free, of course." "Not free," Tommy said firmly. "I'll pay with my money." Chen saved the situation. "Sir, if you allow me, let me pay. I'd be honored." 15 minutes later, 3 military vehicles parked outside the diner. Colonel Martinez entered with 2 officers and 4 soldiers. Martinez went directly to Tommy's table. "Staff Sergeant Rodriguez," he said. "Colonel Martinez, 3rd Marine Division. It's a great honor to meet you." Tommy tried to stand up, but Martinez stopped him. "Please sit, sir. We'll wait standing." All soldiers stood at attention around Tommy. Everyone in the restaurant was watching this scene. "Rodriguez," Martinez said, "your story is legendary in the Marine Corps. Every young Marine learns what you did." Tommy felt his eyes welling up. "I just did my job, sir." "No," Martinez said, "you performed heroism, and your being here now is unacceptable." Martinez took out his phone. "Connect me to the VA director. Urgent." A few minutes later, Director Williams. "Colonel Martinez." "Yes, Marine. I want to talk about the situation of Medal of Honor recipient Thomas Rodriguez." "Yes, that Thomas Rodriguez. He's currently homeless. How is this possible?" Everyone in the restaurant was listening to this phone conversation. "I understand," Martinez said. "Today? Yes, it will be handled today. Thank you." Martinez hung up and turned to Tommy. "Rodriguez, Veterans Affairs couldn't find your file. Bureaucratic error. But now it's found. Full VA benefits will start for you tomorrow. Retroactively." Tears were flowing from Tommy's eyes. "What does this mean, sir?" "It means you're no longer homeless. It means you'll receive the respect you deserve. It means no hero will be forgotten." Chen stepped forward. "Sir, there's a place for you at the Marine Barracks. Temporarily, until we find a permanent home." "Not necessary," Martinez said. "I'll personally take care of it." "Rodriguez, we'll find a suitable place for you." At that moment, the restaurant door opened, and a local journalist entered. Chen had called him. "Colonel Martinez," the journalist said, "can I write this story? People should know." Tommy hesitated. "I don't know. I don't like attracting attention." Martinez looked at him. "Rodriguez, your story is inspiring. Maybe it will help other veterans." Tommy thought, then nodded. "If it helps others, I accept." The next day there was a big news story in the newspaper. "Homeless hero, Medal of Honor recipient in our town." The story spread throughout the state. By the end of that week, Tommy had moved into his new home, a small but clean apartment. His VA benefits had started, and for the first time in his life, he felt safe after a long time. But the real change was in how people looked at him. He was no longer seen as a homeless man, but as a hero. People recognized him on the street, greeted him with respect. Chen visited Tommy regularly. "Sir, you're my hero," he would say. "Learning your story was an honor for me. A month later, a small ceremony was organized in town in Tommy's honor. The mayor gave him the keys to the city. "This town is proud of you," he said. Tommy gave a speech at the ceremony. "I just did my job," he said. "But what I learned is, no veteran should be forgotten. We're all one family." After the ceremony, young soldiers surrounded Tommy. They wanted him to tell them his stories. Tommy hesitated at first, but then accepted. "Courage," he told them, "is not about not being afraid. It's about doing what's right, even when you're scared." 6 months later, Tommy had completely started a new life. He was receiving full support from the VA, having regular checkups, receiving PTSD treatment, and most importantly, he felt valuable. He also went to Sunrise Diner once a week, eating at the same table, but now he was welcomed not as an unwanted customer, but as a respected hero. Richardson had apologized many times for his behavior that day. "If I had known," he would start each time. "You couldn't have known," Tommy would say. "What matters is that you know now." One day, while Tommy was sitting at Sunrise Diner, a young homeless man entered. Other customers began to feel uncomfortable. Tommy stood up and approached the man. "Come sit with me," he said. "Let me buy you a meal." Richardson wanted to intervene, but Tommy looked at him. Richardson fell silent. "Look," Tommy told the young man, "I was like you too, but I wasn't forgotten. You won't be forgotten either." From that day on, Tommy's new mission began, helping homeless veterans, directing them to the system, listening to their stories. Colonel Martinez supported this effort. The Rodriguez Veteran Outreach Program began. Under Tommy's leadership, dozens of homeless veterans received help. 6 months later, Tommy had completely started a new life. He was receiving full support from the VA, having regular checkups, receiving PTSD treatment, and most importantly, he felt valuable. He also went to Sunrise Diner once a week, eating at the same table, but now he was welcomed not as an unwanted customer, but as a respected hero. Richardson had apologized many times for his behavior that day. "You couldn't have known," Tommy would say. "What matters is that you know now." One day, while Tommy was sitting at Sunrise Diner, a young homeless man entered. Other customers began to feel uncomfortable. Tommy stood up and approached the man. "Come, sit with me," he said. "Let me buy you a meal." Richardson wanted to intervene, but Tommy looked at him. Richardson fell silent. "Look," Tommy told the young man, "I was like you too, but I wasn't forgotten. You won't be forgotten either." From that day on, Tommy's new mission began, helping homeless veterans, directing them to the system, listening to their stories. Colonel Martinez supported this effort. The Rodriguez Veteran Outreach Program began. Under Tommy's leadership, dozens of homeless veterans received help.